So welcome to your ACE Talking Circle session, the first one of the new grant year. So welcome officially to year 2 of your grant. We'll still get you disclaimed here.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
All right. So we have a full agenda today. We're going to talk about your year 2 budgets. We're going to talk about APR updates. We're going to make sure everybody is ready to really launch year 2. We're in about the second week for most of you, and have some time to share about what's going on in your programs as you are launching year 2, and questions. I know we have a number of folks with questions, so we want to make sure and provide some time for that. And then at the end, I'll give you some updates on other upcoming events and things like that. So as we're going through, we'll have plenty of time to unmute and chat, but also feel free to pop questions into the chat box, and we'll make sure and address those as we go along as well. And with that, I'll let Bianca take it away.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for everyone who submitted all of the work that we've done for the planning period. And I know there's a couple more we're still working on, but I'm really excited for this new year because now we should all be implementing, and I'm so excited to hear, how your projects are going.
So we figured we would start with everybody's favorite topic, budgets, because, it can only become more cheerful from there, because I know how much everybody likes talking about budgeting. So you have your year 2 budget. If you haven't looked at it yet, make sure and go into G5, download your new GAN for year 2 so that you know exactly how much you were awarded for year 2, because it may or may not be what you were expecting. You want to make sure you've got that correct number. So for year 2, you will be submitting a year 2 budget revision. Before any of you panic, please know this is just for year 2. You're not turning in another 5-year budget revision. You're solely going to turn in a budget revision for this year's annual budget. Okay, so that's also why it's really important that you've looked at that GAN and you're using the appropriate amount that you were allocated for this year. We have a form for you. It's the annual optional budget revision form. I'm going to both pop that in the chat box. I will email it to you, and then I'll also show you where you can get it online at the end of the session today in an on-demand fashion. Okay. Oh, you can hear another presentation taking place. Is it like double me? Can you hear it when I don't talk?
I don't hear anything.
Okay.
Extra.
All right. Yeah, Shannon's saying she only hears me. All right. Let me know if it keeps happening, because yeah, I'm in my home, so I promise there's no other presentations happening right now, at least to my knowledge. All right. So I'm going to put that over in the chat box for you, that form for your annual budget revision. So that should be appearing in the chat box where you can download it. That is going to be due Wednesday, November 17th. Okay. And I'm curious to know, because we've been mulling this over, would it be helpful to any of you if I sent out a calendar invite that is just a reminder that it's due that day? So you can let me know in the chat box if that's something that you would like, or no, not helpful. Fine either way, but just kind of curious. Remember that as you are doing these budget revisions, this is just for the year 2 budget, and it does have to follow the 80% direct services, 20% project cost split. Okay, so everybody is in implementation now. So everybody's full budget for this year has to follow that 80-20 split. So just to familiarize you with what's going to be in this new form, because it is much smaller than your 5-year budget revision form, you'll have 2 tabs, both of which should be very familiar to you. The first tab you'll see here, it is your per student cost tab. Now that you're actually implementing, you should have a bit better idea of what services you're currently providing or plan to provide this year and their per student cost. Now, of course, there may still be changes later in the year, which is perfectly fine, but go ahead and put forth your plan here for the year. And you'll notice the top is the same as it's always been on the others, except reduced to just ask for year 2 information. So other than that, that form's exactly the same as you completed last year. Your second tab is where you're actually going to put your budget. And because I know that's small, open up that one in the chat box. But really, this is the exact same as what you've been doing before. The biggest things are, when we look here at current performance period budget, that's asking for the amount from your year 2 GAN. So pull down that year 2 GAN out of G5, and that's your full year 2 allocation. Your carryover, this nice second column, are all the monies left from year 1 as of October 1st. So you've drawn down whatever you've drawn down through the end of September. That was your year 2 expenditures. Whatever was left on October 1st of that year 1 monies, that's your carryover. So you'll enter that in that second column. And the third column will auto calculate for you, letting you know the total amount that you have available to spend this fiscal year. So in year 2, all the other columns exactly as you've been completing it in previous budget revisions. So not asking for anything new there. Any questions on the form, the due date? I do see in the chat box, the reminder seems popular, so I will do that. I'll just send that as a separate little calendar invite for everybody. And just like with any of them, if it's not something that's useful for you, you can just decline it and then it won't show up on your calendar.
So I do want to clarify the biggest need for this budget is, to show if there was any carryover and also if there was any reductions on how you will be spending your funds. Also, even whatever carryover was left over cannot be used for planning period activities. It definitely has to go into the 80-20 and be hopefully, for the direct services. So, make sure that those calculations are still aligned. But, if you, are doing exactly what you've already submitted, you might have just submitted something really recent to me. I would still like to see this budget completed, but it will be just, a copy and paste. And of course, it will be uploaded. So, everyone's on the same page on where we're on with the budget. I will also send out a Calendly link so we can have some one-on-ones in the next month and a half, just for people who have any questions or concerns about the budget, especially if, you received a reduction or just still confused on, how to carry over funds or for any reason. But I do want to make sure that we're meeting. It might not be the whole hour this time, but maybe just a quick 30-minute call so we can go over the budget and make sure we're all on the same page. So definitely look out for an email through G5 with a link to schedule a meeting with me this fall.
And we did have one chat box question. Is the 80-20 split based off of the total existing budget amount? And yes, it is. So yeah, your full existing budget will have to meet that 80-20 split. You'll notice it will tell you, it will turn things yellow if you are outside that 80-20 split. So it'll give you a little pre-warning that maybe you need to move some things around a bit. All right, if you think of those budget questions later, pop them in the chat box. We can always come back and
I
talk
just
about it
thought of an answer to a possible question that's not asked, but I might as well mention it. And I think this is actually the question I just entered. So if you still have year one expenditures that you are spending from year one, I do not want that included in carryover. I want to know, whatever's remaining from year one. So I believe you have like 45 days to spend down year one's expenditures, but do not include that in the carryover amount. So this would be anything that is left over from year one's activities.
Yeah.
Is that his question? Yeah. See, I knew someone had that question.
That was a question. And I do want to kind of just make sure and really clarify for folks that when Bianca's talking about you have those 45 days to spend down your expenditures, that's for things you actually purchased by September 30th, but maybe you hadn't received them. Maybe you hadn't been able to actually draw down the monies from G5, but you can't make any new expenditures. Any new expenditures after October 1st are considered year two. They have to meet the 80-20 split. But if you made a purchase prior to September 30th, but you just weren't able to draw down those funds from G5 yet, that still counts as year one. And I know that can be confusing. So yeah, always feel free to ask if you have any of those kind of trickier budget situations. If you did not commit, can you carry over? So if you did not actually purchase the 2 smart boards by September 30th, can you purchase them in year 2?
So you can carry over the funds if you need to purchase that again would need to fit in more of the structural cost, and it would be limited into that 20%. So just be careful that anything that's carried over on what category it would need to come out of. But if it's a planning period activity, hopefully those contracts are ending or finishing up, set up things. We definitely should be in full implementation mode right now, providing services to students.
Great. All right. But yeah, keep the budget questions coming. Like I said, we can always pop back to budget. I know there's always lots of pieces and parts to that. Our second big thing is talking about APR updates. So all of you completed your spring 2021 APRs back in primarily the beginning of May. You may have sent in a couple things other than that, but generally in May. But it is now time to update that data. So almost all of you submitted at least one of your GEPRA measures or at least one of your project objectives as 999, indicating we don't have the data yet, but we will have it by the end of the year. So we need to update those so that we can report them to Congress, because those are reported this fall. So you're going to be updating just Section A. So that means we don't need a new cover sheet. We don't need a new executive summary. You don't need to submit a new Section B for your budget or a Section C, just Section A. So a very mini version. And you're going to be updating all of your GEPRA and project objectives. It is really important when you're doing this, and I'll show you an example, that you do not submit 999s this time because year one is over. So if data at this point still does not exist, then you would be entering 0/1, which indicates there was no data for this particular measure in year one. Okay, so that's kind of the key. 999 time is over. It's either 0/1 for no data exists, or report the data that you have. I'm going to put the form. I've got a nice, easy version of Section A that I'll put over in the chat box for you. These are due Friday, October 29th. And you're actually just going to email those over to us at oie@seiservices.com. We're compiling them all to make it a little bit easier for the program officers to get those uploaded and to get all that data over to Congress. So you'll just submit those over via email. And let me get that form in the chat box for you here. It is a Word document. The basic form just has those 2 pages, but remember, you can just copy and paste those pages and make it as long as you need. If you have any trouble doing that, let me know, and I'm happy to help you extend that form. I know sometimes the forms are a little persnickety. So just a reminder of what that looks like. This is where you're putting your performance measure there. You're marking the measure type, either GEPRA or project here, and then reporting the ratios of actual data. Really important reminder, and I think this is the slide to come back to if you can't remember, and you're like, I'm not sure what I was supposed to report for each one. Your GEPRA have to be the exact wording from the NIA. And I can send out that wording again if that would be helpful. But a few of you in your APR that you did in May got a little creative with the GEPRA wording. Maybe you added in some additional words or some additional detail. Unfortunately, we can't do that. You can put those additional words in detail in your explanation of progress, but not in the actual project measure wording right there. Your project measures need to be worded exactly as you put them in your May APR. And that's because that APR locked them in. So just copy and paste those over. And remember, for GEPRA, all we need you to report is your actual performance ratio. And for your project measures, we only need you to report your target ratio and your actual performance ratio. So that's all the information you'll be entering in the quantitative box. And then down below, and I'll go back to remind you where that is, you have that area for explanation of progress. You'll be updating that. And just a reminder there that ideally you're entering information in the explanation of progress for every measure. So feel free to break that down into separate pages to make it easier on you and to make it easier on whoever's reading it. Instead of putting, say, 10 measures all in a row and then just a little bitty explanation of progress. You know, it's those explanations of progress that are really helpful to be able to provide context. So again, just reminder, you can come back to this slide anytime to look at how you're going to be doing that. Those are due Friday, October 29th. So basically by the end of the month. If you've made it to Halloween, you're too far. So email those in to oie@seiservices.com and we'll get that taken care of for you. If you have questions about how to do that, if you are a new project director and maybe you don't know where to find the May APR, reach out and let us know. We can help you with that. We can help you get that all sorted out so that this is as easy as possible. And let's see, we do have a question. 0/1 would be for those with a full 12-month planning period. So it depends, Rusty. For most of the GEPRA measures, yes, it would be a 0/1 because you didn't serve any kids. You didn't have any services just yet. So most of your GEPRA measures would just be 0/1. But depending upon your project measures, some folks had some project measures even in their planning period that they could report some data on, some didn't. So that will vary a little bit, but yeah, if you had a full planning year, most likely all your GEPRA measures are going to be 0/1. Will this October, I'm gonna edit. Will this October opportunity to update happen every year? Yes. And this is to help also just make that annual APR a little less crowded and confusing, because people were then having to report on data a whole year later, and it was getting really kind of convoluted and difficult. So we're not going to anything where you do full APRs multiple times, but yes, you will have the opportunity to update that section A each fall. All right, any other questions? And you're welcome, to put those in the chat box or unmute, either one, whatever is easier for you. All right, so those are the two big
questions, just in case someone else might ask it.
Yeah.
Later. what if they do not need to update their project or GIPRA based on their planning period? Should they still send you an updated standard form?
If you think that you don't need to do an update, please reach out, because I don't, at this point, know of any grantees that don't need to update. So if you think you don't need to update, just shoot me an email and we'll look at your specific instance and double check that. But at this point, I don't know of any of you that don't need to update something. But yeah, definite good question, and one that I'm sure was going to come up.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So those are really the two big things that are due this fall. So that's going to be your APR update on October 29th and your budget revision on November 17th. Other than that, just full force implementation, nothing else due this fall. But that does bring us to the slide I didn't want to have to bring back in October, but at least is much, much shorter. So we do still have a few items that are overdue. What might those be, you ask? So it was your full 5-year budget revision, which everyone needed to have completed and approved, and your 4 implementation deliverables, which were a description of your service selection process, a description of your parent involvement and feedback process, a description of the process that you were going to use if students wanting services exceeded your capacity, and then a sample of your written service provider agreement, along with a list of all the service providers that you're currently contracting with. So those are the items. I will put up the list and kind of talk through while it's up so that you can peruse and see if you're listed. These are the folks that we still need. Now, you may see your name on here and think, well, I already submitted. So it could be a number of things. If you submitted a while back and you have heard nothing, your submission may have gone out into the internet wonderland. So forward that email back in so that we can make sure that it has been reviewed and approved for you. It could be that you submitted something and Bianca sent you some feedback because some adjustments or tweaks needed to be made. So you may be in that process of getting that fixed up. So there could be some room there, but the important piece is if you are listed on this list, please, please, please reach out, whether that's to clear up confusion about something you feel like you already submitted, or just reach out and ask for help. It is much preferred that you ask for help and let us provide any support we can to you so that you can get this stuff knocked out, not have to worry about it anymore, and just move on with running your program. So if you have, questions, particularly about what you've already submitted, it's best to send those to Bianca because that's where you submitted them to. Unfortunately, sometimes I get those questions. I have no idea if you've submitted to Bianca unless you happen to copy the OIE TA team. So I can't really answer that for you. So make sure, send that over to Bianca. If you want to schedule a time because you have questions or you need help putting any of this together, you're welcome to reach out to the TA team and we can schedule some time with you. But just peruse. Like I said, if you're on here, get in touch and let's get these worked out and off your desk so you don't have to worry about them anymore. Any questions on missing items? All right. Then we can move to what I think is the more fun part, program sharing. So I know some of you started implementing last year, but most of you had a full planning year and are just starting implementing now in October. So we would love to hear from you. How is that going? What are some exciting things happening in your program? Anybody have updates or exciting activities happening? We can also take questions during this time. So if you're mulling over whether you have anything that you think is exciting enough to share, we can also, if you have any questions currently, whether it be about the things we've talked about, or I know some of you came prepared with some questions you wanted to make sure and get in today, we can take those too.
I'll speak. This is
Go
John
ahead.
Marbury. I'm with the Tunica Biloxi tribe, and we had 6 months of planning from October to the end of March, and started providing services April 1st. We were finishing up an extension of our NYCP grant, so we had some relationships, but those were mainly with local tribal students. Our new ACE grant expanded our reach to tribal citizens that live all over the country. So we have a population base in Texas, one in Illinois, and then a few scattered out throughout the country. So logistically, it's a challenge. We were, as of the middle of September, we got our third and final academic counselor who will be serving in the Texas area on board, and so they are getting up to speed. Our new counselors, they're reaching out to families, getting to know the students. We're doing, and so a lot of stuff is still, for most of the students in those areas are just starting up. That we had some that were taking advantage of services, tutoring, and so forth. Also, because we started our services April 1st, down south, a lot of our students were getting toward the end of their school year. So of course the families didn't see a lot of urgency. So it took us a while, but we have exceeded our year one participation goal which was 131. We're now up to 147 students, which is great. And so it's still there's still a lot of the parents trying to figure out what we have here. This is a great opportunity. There's a lot of funding for educational services. So we're still doing a lot of communication as far as in educating families, but we're able to do more of it one-on-one through phone calls and so forth through our new counselors and so forth. So we've done some group activities for students, virtually. With locally, we've sort of been off and on again as far as in-person stuff. Of course, we had that window in late May and June where things were getting better, and then we kind of reverted back. And so we may be getting back very soon to doing some in-person. We really think that we will do a lot better once that happens, but we're having to roll with it and do what we can. So, something that we've tried before, and we did recently. We had a cooking class, a virtual cooking class. We partnered with New Orleans School of Culinary, the New Orleans Culinary School, and we send out packages to students who participate of the ingredients. I think we did beignets or something this last time, and the students enjoy it, but the families are there, and it becomes sort of a family activity in the home. And so it's something just to get people involved. Our new academic counselor in Houston is doing a fall activity coming up at the end of the month. And it'll give her an opportunity to meet parents and students in person. So that'll be a good thing there. So a lot of things are going on. I just wanted to say it's a positive thing. There's some starts and stops, but and with the environment we're in, that's to be expected. So we're just all very excited. I finally got our whole staff on board, and unfortunately, I do have a turnover that's about to occur. However, I got a replacement ready to go, so that's a good thing. So anyways, I just wanted to share. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, and John, you provided me with the perfect segue into the next question I received in my chat box. So the question is, what do we do when a contractor backs out? We're currently looking to replace, but still in that looking process. So I'll give you, as far as like, the technical side, that it's okay if a contractor backs out. OIE understands that you have no control really over the contractors in that way. If they choose that they don't want to provide a service anymore, you can't force them. So don't worry about that end of things. But more importantly, probably for you, is you're trying to replace them. What are you doing in the meantime? So for other folks, have you had that situation? How are you handling it? Any advice?
Well, for me, fortunately, the person I'm having to replace internally, a big part of most of their responsibility, let's say half of their responsibility, is administrative. So that's going to be a little easier. But we've just gone through renewing a lot of our contracts. We wanted to kind of keep it on the grant year. However, I learned this little trick that we include a clause that says that it's still in effect unless we formally cancel it. And so if we have a provider that we're not happy with, based on the services they've provided to our students, then we will evaluate that and decide whether or not we want to fix it with them or are just basically in our relationship with them. So we haven't had that problem, but so we just went through that. We did have a couple, at least one provider who decided they wanted to go year to year, so they wanted to renew every year. So we worked with that. But as far as replacing a contractor, you just have to find maybe something that might be temporary. I'm sure most of us have an experience now in developing a contract, reaching out to a potential provider and, letting them know what we need, see if they're willing to work within our parameters of our grant and so forth. And so I think there are a lot out there who are willing to do that. I know it's inconvenient. It might stretch your team to do other things in the interim, but it's worth it. And we just have to be ready to do that. I know there's a lot of experienced people out there on this call that know that things happen. And I think OIE and Department of Education understand that. And so we just it's always good to have a backup plan,
Yeah. Yeah. Before starting to do the work I do now, I ran after school programs for many years. And there was always a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan, because you never knew when a provider was going to run off. Anybody else have any advice as far as, losing contractors kind of last minute or potentially after they've started the service even? And we also have a kind of along with that question. So Rusty was asking, if a contractor does back out, do you have to replace them with a new contractor providing the exact same service? So kind of the same idea. It would be wonderful if you could, because if you have done your needs assessment and you're providing services based on what you know are the needs of your students and community, then ideally you'd find someone who's going to be able to provide that same service. However, probably reality in many cases that may take you a minute, particularly if it's a very specialized service or something not readily available in the community. So maybe you have to say, well, we were going to provide service A, we lost that provider. We're going to now delay that and hopefully start it back up in 6 weeks when we can find someone new. In the meantime, if you want to provide a different service, given it's within the scope of your project, so it still has to be within the scope of your grant project, and that there is an actual need for it in your community, you can add additional services and change services throughout the year as your needs and availability of folks change. You're not stuck. Oh, it's bad luck to have a backup plan. Okay, I do understand that. Yeah. We do want to keep our good luck going. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention something similar happening within my program, where our Heritage Preservation Department, who is the expert in providing us with traditional teachings, were set and had told me they were ready to go. We just needed to have our MOU in place, and basically stopped responding to me for about 5 weeks leading up to the start of the program, which we had do have 270 kids that are part of the program right now for the first semester here. And I'm right now trying to let them know we've been delaying it for 3 weeks and looking for additional support, and trying to figure out if we need to have contracts set up with each individual traditional leader in the area that could help provide services, or if that's something that we could do as like a Band-Aid via invoices until we can have either a department or a vendor come in to help us provide that service. So that was my question on that.
Yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense, that your vendor has run away, has gone completely incommunicado at this point. So yeah, you could absolutely start doing like those individual contracts with, say, elders in the community. Maybe they're going to come in and do it together as a group. Maybe you're going to have, one a week providing different type things. So yeah, you could do agreements with them. And then when you're able to find a more long-term solution, I think that would be fine.
And those individual agreements, I was seeking some help from some people in our department, and what they've done in the past was via invoices, and then had the department be like the hub for all of that, compared to doing individual contracts with people for 45 minutes educational opportunities. So that's where I'm still kind of curious. It seems like a gray area for me.
So let me make sure I'm understanding. You were thinking about doing a contract with the department, and then the department will pay those individual instructors. Yeah, that would be fine. As long as you have a contract with whoever you're going to directly give the ACE money to. So if you are the ACE department and you're going to contract with the education department, that's fine. Education department is now your provider. You've got a service provider agreement with them. So you're going to pay the education department that per student money. And then, yeah, they can dole it out to the folks that are actually providing the services.
All right, now that makes me feel a lot better, because just doing individual contracts with local elders it's tough enough, because I need to personally use money out of my funds, my own personal money, to provide them with a gift before I can even ask them if they'll help provide a service. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and those contracts can be really overwhelming for individuals, and particularly individuals who just aren't used to doing things that way. So yeah, I think that will work just fine. And then over in the chat box, just kind of recapping some of that, is Spencer was sharing he'd only replace a contractor that runs off like that if the service was truly being used and needed. So, if it's before the service starts, if you have a ton of folks signed up for it, I think, yeah, that's good reason to try to replace. Or if it's already started and it's been very popular and very useful, yeah, keeping that going. Clarence asking, is that the bundle concept? So not quite the bundle concept. So for the bundle, that is one totally acceptable way to contract though. But typically when we're talking about the bundling, this would be, it's like, let me
give the students. So like the student like select like a pathway or something, and that pathway may include different services. So that's kind of like the bundle that we were kind of talking about in previous, but yeah, this is a different concept.
Yeah. So it could be like, let's say like a college prep bundle. And so they know when they sign up for that, they're going to get the college essay activity, and they're going to get the
Tutor.
college visit activity. Yeah. They're going to
Yeah.
get maybe this tutor. Maybe they're also going to get, maybe it's a different type of thing that's going to involve a need for transportation. So when they sign up for this particular service, transportation is bundled in because it's far away. So yeah, it's creating kind of little packages that people can opt into.
So I also received some interesting questions I felt like would be better asked by the grantees. And I believe yep, they're on. And one of them was, what are some of the supplemental counseling services that grantees are offering? We can, as long as it's supplemental to what's already offered to the child. I do remember like a grantee talking about one of the services that was like for like trauma and like more cultural related, but I don't know if anyone's on that could speak on some of the services that they're offering that's considered counseling services that would be supplemental. Or different ideas that you've thought of.
Hello, this is Klaus Hogue. I'm back among the living.
Good.
I had a health setback a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to work my way back up. But I'm glad to be on today. So yeah, related to that, Bianca, I'm glad you brought it up. So one of our schools that we're partnering with, they asked about something like that's related to counseling, and so there's a business out there that provides like a telehealth support services, but it's in the area of mental health. And so they wanted to see if that was a possible service that could be provided to their students, because I guess the need right now is really, really great around mental health and just personal wellness. But as I read through this description of the services, it does mention things like services as it's spelled out, like in an IEP. And so I guess I was just trying to get a better understanding of to what degree would we get involved in counseling supports for students. Because I was thinking maybe, I'm just trying to remember back through the year what some of our conversations had been like. And I was trying to think like, I guess from what I could remember is like things like if it's a very specialized service that students would be referred to, like a psychiatrist or a psychologist, someone like that, to help with providing additional therapy services, I guess. And again, as it maybe be connected to an IEP, I'm thinking that that's probably not something we would support. But I guess maybe in my mind, I'm thinking it's more like general, like personal wellness areas. So yeah, I was just trying to get a better understanding of what is what, like how far can we go with it?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing, and I think maybe Bianca's about to touch on it too. Yeah, if it's in an IEP, anything in an IEP is something that the school themselves have now determined that they're going to provide. So that would no longer be considered supplementary, because once it's in that IEP, the IEP is basically the school's promise of what they're going to provide for that kiddo. So your thinking there is totally correct.
Yeah, and I do think like there's a ton of things that could be provided. I know, the suicide rate is so high amongst Native communities. If there's suicide prevention kind of courses, or if there's something that that the community really needs, if that like COVID has this depression effect, maybe you can think of something that could boost that. I don't know, it would definitely have to be supplemental. And I think, if it's attached to an IEP, then that we definitely can't provide services because someone else is already, paying for those services. So, if you can think of something that's more like culturally related or that's really needed, that's not offered through the school. And it could be, individual or groups or a teacher teaching it, but it definitely is and several different options. And I was wondering if there's anyone who's already implementing some type of service that may be similar or considered the counseling service.
Well, we have a situation that just recently arose where a parent has observed some change in their child, and the way we are approaching it is, we have our third goal of our grant deals with students with disabilities, mental, physical, substance abuse, etc. And so we're trying to go through the school and see if the issues can be addressed through the school. We're organizing a meeting with the parent and the counselor of the school and see and examining the extent of the problem and see if it can be dealt with it at that level. But there is a possibility that maybe it goes beyond what the school can do. Now, it's up to the parent and the school to decide whether there should be an IEP. But our viewpoint is if it goes beyond what the school is willing to do, then we will take over. And so we will look for providers that might help with the cost of counseling for that student. And so that's how we are approaching it.
Michael, did you go ahead?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to follow up on that because we have kind of a similar situation where we have a service provider that is willing to provide holistic type therapy. It's horse training, and they're a certified counselor. And so we have some students who are interested in that. We didn't know if something like that would be allowable. There's no IEP that says that they need it, but it's just something that they need. And then also for them to do that, there are supplies that they would need for that type of service. So paying for that service and providing supplies for that service, are those types of things allowable?
So that may be something, that when the student is selecting, you may be providing the supplies or like the bundle thing that we were kind of talking about before. But yeah, I think that definitely fits into something that's supplementary to what's already being provided. As long as the student is selecting it as one of the choices, I definitely can see that as an option. And, if you can find it and make it fit into your scope of your grant, hopefully, something in your application or your goals will tie into the activities that you're trying, that you want to do. So as long as it's in your whole scope of your grant and it's supplementary to what's already being provided.
Right. Any other ideas on the supplementary counseling front?
Hello, this is Spencer. I thought I'd share. As a school principal under the NYCP program, we saw a huge benefit and a huge impact in a positive way in bringing those services into our building. So we were able to contract with local providers to provide actual therapists, and they would be able to meet with kids in an office space where they could, private away from the crowds and hold therapy, mental health counseling. And so we've kind of created a tier system, tier 1, 2, and 3, and that tier 3 piece being the highest level of counseling that all of us, or people that dealing with trauma or different things like that get access. And then we also have a school social worker and a school counselor in the building that can provide lower levels of counseling, whether that's just motivational or social emotional, things like that. That huge impact. It's very beneficial if you can bring people in to help kids in that way. It's awesome.
Nice, thank you.
And I guess just
So
we had to revamp because we had a local company that was providing some of that, and they've kind of, because of such a demand on mental health counselors, they're unable to meet the demand. So we've actually kind of reached out and contracted with some others, not necessarily with our ACE grant, but with our kind of other departments to support that. So I know we do have some of the telehealth. We have University of Utah that's helping provide therapy. And then we also have some local vendors and some that have just gone on their own that we're contracting with. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another question that I received, and I thought that you all professionals would know the answer better. And that's just with dealing with children in foster care, and how do you help them attain like tribal IDs and tribal benefits? And if I see Deb's on, if you wanted to follow up on that question or ask your specific need on that, you definitely can. But I thought it was something I haven't considered.
Yeah, and I think she also had popped over in the chat. The other part was, what is everyone requiring as far as enrollment documentation for kids in their program? Because I think part of the concern is, what are you requiring for enrollment documentation? And then for those students who are in foster care, how do you help them get those documents to be able to enroll?
I don't know how it works. I'm sorry, my name's Autumn Smith Amy, and I'm talking from Alaska. I don't know how it works in other states, but I do know whatever the local CPS/OCS, whoever is the agency that has the overbroad care of the children, usually has some sort of internal ICWA department and or attachment to BIA through them. So I think that would be probably the first step, is reaching out with their ICWA department to that overhead child caring agency and see what's the quickest way for them to establish that. I've also had a lot of really good success with the BIA just in general when I have high-risk clients and or foster children.
Thank you. Anybody else run into this? Anybody else want to kind of share if you're even requiring tribal ID for enrollment?
Hey, this is Rusty.
Rusty.
How are you? I'm calling in from Omaha on our national convention. Anyway, so we are not requiring verification since we're working with grant schools on the Navajo Reservation. So it's open to all of those students. So any student that qualifies to go to a Navajo tribally controlled school would qualify for our program. So that's kind of how we're handling it.
Thank you. And thanks for tuning in from NIEA. I'm sure you're super busy this week.
It's been busy. It's going pretty good though. It's been busy but smooth. So
wonderful.
It's going good.
Well, and I'll in case anyone didn't see your comment in the chat box, if anybody is at NIEA this week and maybe you're tuning in from your hotel room today, Rusty's going to be presenting about their ACE program on Saturday. So look for that in the workshops. So the kind of follow-up question, not requiring any documentation is a possibility. Yes. So what you require for enrollment in your program is entirely up to you and your organization. That is not something that OIE stipulates. That is up to your organization to decide what you're going to choose to require for enrollment. You have all that flexibility there for you.
The only thing I think you should be mindful from our perspective is who you targeted in your application. So, if you specifically said, this population only, 8th graders with 50% Indian blood can, if you were that specific to say that is who you're targeting, then that's who you need to target, but if you can fit them into your targeted number, then and it fits with your tribe or your program's rules, then yeah, we don't have a requirement for that.
Yeah. Well, and there was also a question, if a grant's written for students K through 12, could preschoolers apply? And so I think the kind of quick and easy answer to that is whatever group of students, whether it be age level or certain schools or things that you said you were going to serve, that is who you're supposed to serve. So if you wanted to now start serving preschool age students, you would actually have to ask OIE for permission to make that change. So you would need to reach out to Bianca to discuss that, because it was a competitive award. And so if you're wanting to change those age levels or those grade levels, that's something that does have to go in for formal approval, because you were awarded based off the idea that you were going to serve that particular audience. The other one I saw was someone was asking, so now you're working on year 2 budget revisions. What does the project director meeting look like this year? And will you need travel monies for that? So good news for your budget. I can officially announce, not the dates just yet, but I can announce that it will be virtual. So take that travel money and throw it back in your budget. And that's always helpful because all of that was in project costs. So you just got a scotch bit of money back into your project cost budget. So there will be no expense to you to be able to attend that again this year. Good question. Let's see, and I'm making sure I didn't miss anybody's question in here. If I did, just let me know, because I'm thinking I hit all of them. Oh,
I
Ryan.
think it says someone has a raised hand.
That's me, thanks. Going back to the previous one, we were mentioning working with whether it's enrolled students, how to track, get their tribal IDs, those kind of things. I've had a few other nations reach out to me that are in our service area, either going to schools locally here or heard about it through employment with the nation, because I had sent out something to everyone within our nation here. So I was curious if anyone's worked with a bunch of different tribal students and how they track that information, since our original grant said that we're going to be working with 1,000 enrolled Ho-Chunk students, but then we have other students that want to utilize our services. So I was wondering if anyone else ran into those same issues.
Good question. Anybody have experience to share with Ryan or advice? I know for a fact some of you do have similar situations.
Or you can message me. I'm fine with that. If you're
Yeah.
if you're camera shy, that is perfectly fine. Send me a
Yes.
private message, send me an email. I just would like to, it's easy for me to understand our enrolled students or descendants, and being able to work with our enrollment office to track that information. But for outside of the Ho-Chunk Nation, I'm just not sure what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so if anybody thinks of any advice, particularly if you're working with multiple tribes or multiple areas, yeah, feel free to unmute or pop that in the chat box. And I have a related question in the chat box, and then I'll go to your hand up. I do see it, Spencer. Can students from other ethnic groups apply for the program? So can students who are not considered Native American apply for the program?
Everything goes back to what you submitted in your application in your program. If you are targeting one particular school and all the students in there, and that is what your targeted population is. Of course, it still needs to be culturally relative to Native Americans, but it really depends on your program requirements and who your targeted students were. So again, if you said you were going to target 100 Lummies, you need to target 100 Lummies. And how you define Lummies is, up to the tribe and your entity, so it just really goes back to what you submitted. If it was 100 kids on the Navajo reservation, and the Navajo reservation is made up of 20 different ethnic, different types of people, then that's, what you targeted. So we do not have, that's, how you were awarded, so.
Yeah. And I know we have a number of new project directors who are kind of coming in mid-grant, and you're trying to wander through those proposals and things. So if you need help looking through and really determining who your target audience is supposed to be, please let us know. These are the types of things that we can help you with in a coaching call, and make sure that you're staying within the scope and the spirit of your project. And Kelly was sharing, so Kelly's with Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma. She's serving all Native American students enrolled at 3 partner schools. So she's working with 3 different schools. So they do have to be enrolled in one of those 3, but it can be any student who is denoted as Native American. So a myriad of tribes. They have a master list of students that are on the JON list at each partner location, or have self-identified as Native American with the schools. So while they're not necessarily asking for tribal ID cards, they have a process in place for how they're determining that they're staying within what they said in their grant. Thanks, Kelly. All right, Spencer, what's your question or advice?
No advice. I just had a question.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is regarding whether or not it's an appropriate expenditure. So we have, with the grant, we've gone through the process and created a portal, an online portal for students to, and it's connected to our school district's app. And so we are a school district grantee. So we were hoping to be able to incentivize our stakeholders to download the app, so they'd all be informed and get the information and interact through that. So our thinking was, our plan was we were going to have the local high school here at the next football game, as they were taking tickets or gate money, if they could show, if the parent or student showed that app on their phone or download it right there, that they would record that, and then we could reimburse them from our grant money. Just didn't know if that would be an appropriate way to use supply money, or.
Yeah, we cannot have incentives that have a cash value to it. So if it's a gift card or money or check, we wouldn't be able to provide money directly to the students that you are serving.
So we wouldn't reimburse the kids, or the people would be reimbursing the school for the revenue they would have gotten from taking gate money. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
I think it does make sense, but it's still got a cash value.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that were a service you were providing, and you could then contract with the school and be like, we're going to provide this service, it's the cash value incentive that's a little tricky.
Okay. I mean, the incentive is not going to any person, it's just going to an institution. I mean, I guess we'd be contracting with them to to download or to increase the traffic of downloading the app, so that kids are more kids and parents are informed of the services with the grant and learn how to use the portal and sign up for classes and all that kind of stuff. But I understand.
Yeah. I think it's a far reach. But yeah, incentives are a little very, very iffy when it comes to Department of Ed funding. So, definitely keep it educational and away from any type of monetary value.
Yeah, it's a very tricky category. All right, and then I think the only other question I saw was in regards to the data sharing agreement. That's going to be debuting at a webinar later this month, and I'll give you some more information about that here in just a moment as well. All right. Well, then I'm going to hop in and share a couple of upcoming events, but if you have other questions that are popping up, pop those in the chat box, because at the end, as we have time, we can definitely do a few more questions. But I know some people may need to hop right as we get to the stop time. So I want to make sure everybody at least gets all the basic info we were going to share today. All right. So the next thing I want to share is just some updates to our group Padlet. So hopefully everybody can see the Padlet right now on your screen. I'm going to make it a little smaller so that hopefully it's decently sized on your screen, but have made some updates here to hopefully make it even more useful for you. So we did go ahead and split it up. So this is just the Padlet for you who are ACE grantees. We added in the first column all of your upcoming events and deadlines. So you've got your talking circle dates, you have calendar invites for all these things as well. But just if you're ever looking for them, they're all in one spot, including your submission deadlines that are coming up for things due this fall. I told you, other than having them conveniently in the chat box right now and that we'll email out later, I've also got all your forms so that you have kind of a self-service option, so that if you need a fresh form later, you're not always having to ask. You're still welcome to ask, but this way it's also just always available for you. So if you're one of those people who maybe at 2 a.m. are feeling like running through your budget, you don't have to wait. It's right here. So we've got your annual budget revision form. You've got your APR update form, your sample service provider agreement. I think most of you kind of have that nailed down now, but just in case you need that for reference, again, it's here, as well as that 5-year overall budget revision form. So all of those, you click on the picture and then it'll give you an option to download it. So nice and easy for you. And then the other thing, this is my request of you. So I know some of you have shared previously how you were doing your service selection. So we are attempting to kind of put together a true listing of that so that you can look at each other. So we can always take a peek, see great examples that we can share and, give you shout outs for doing fabulous things. So basically under service selection examples. So we still have the column where y'all can continue discussing the methods and questions you might have there. But I've gone ahead and listed every grantee so you can conveniently find yourself. And so let's say that I am Lap Y and I want to put a link to my website where my service selection is, or I want to upload the hard copy form, whatever the case may be, whatever your method is. If you just hit here for add comment, then that's where you can actually go ahead and type it in to be able to give that link or to attach the document. If you put it in the chat box now, if it's a link or a document, whatever it may be, if you put it in the chat box, I will do it for you. Please tell me in the chat box what grantee you are. Most of you I can usually put together, but we do have some new faces. So just make it a little easier on my brain, put in your grantee and then your info, and I will move it here for you. As well as if you want to just shoot me an email, same thing. I'm happy to move it over there for you, or you can do it yourself. But that way it'll start being a nice way that everybody can go and access those examples on their own. And we'll kind of get a little database going that way. So I'm going to put that link over in the chat box again. Like I said, you're welcome to put it in the chat box or shoot me an email and I will move it for you. But you're also welcome to go and take care of it yourself, as well as just check out those other items. And then we still have lots of our other discussion topics going. The thing I would like to know from all of you is, we're putting these things. Are there other things that would be helpful in the Padlet that it would be great if we added to it? Or other things that you would like to see shared from other grantees? Is there something else that you would love to see examples from other grantees about? This was just something that definitely had come up multiple times. So I wanted to get that going. But if there are other things that would be useful, let me know. We can make limitless changes to the Padlet, because the real goal is just for it to be useful for you. All right, and then I'll flip back here.
Can we add a section just for pictures?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me give
For
everybody the
YouTube
caveat.
videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they have their.
Yeah, you could put up pictures, you could put videos, and you can also put links to pictures and videos. And I'll let you know, I'll put in the top comment for the pictures and videos, the release form. But if you would ever like to be featured in our newsletter or a presentation or anything OIE-ish, we will need release forms. So you can put it on the Padlet no matter what. But if you are able to get either student or adult release forms, depending upon who's in the picture, if we have release forms for everybody in the picture, we can actually use that as part of kind of shouting out what you're doing with your program on a more grand stage. So I'll put that form there too, in case that's something any of you are interested in doing, is getting a couple of your photos maybe cleared that could then be used more. All right. So yeah, I'm going to add that column, but like I said, mull it over. Just, if you think of something today or you think of something later that you think would be great to share, we can definitely add all those things. Continue building our ACE community. And then we have some events coming up. So our next ACE talking stick session. So one thing, in case you hadn't noticed from the calendar invites, so last year we were doing monthly ACE talking sticks. This year we have moved to quarterly. So you won't necessarily get to spend quality time with Bianca and I every month, but we'll still be there every quarter. And then you can see conveniently the second bullet. But if you miss us and you want to spend time every month, or if you have questions, we still will have office hours. If you are new and maybe haven't tried out office hours before, office hours are our big get together. So it is open to all OIE grant programs. So you might see other grantees from the STEP programs and the PD programs, NYCP, NOLA-DD, all the various OIE grant programs are invited to office hours. We have all the various program officers on as their schedules allow as well. We have the TA team on, and we really just do it as an open Q&A session. So I run through everybody who's joined the session. You can ask whatever questions you might have, whether it be like a programmatic question that you'd like some program officer input on. Maybe it's a brainstorming question that you just want to kind of mull over with everyone attending or with all the program officers. Lots of flexibility there, but we'll still have that every single month. It occurs the fourth Thursday of the month from 1 to 2 Eastern. So that will still be going on, and then you'll see us again for the next talking stick in January. Then we have 2 other events coming up. We have our data sharing agreements webinar. That's going to be on October 27th from 3 to 4:30. Calendar invite forthcoming. So I know a lot of you were really interested in how people do data sharing, a potential template, because we will be sharing a template that you absolutely don't have to use, but might give you a nice starting point if you're looking for something in that realm. So that will be that date. And then November 9th, we're going to be having our OIE Native American Heritage Month celebration. So this is another opportunity to really showcase some of the things going on in your community. If you are doing anything in your program or community to celebrate Native American Heritage Month, please share that with us. Again, if you already know now, pop it in the chat box. Otherwise, I'll remind you on the next slide again, our email address, and just email us, because we are wanting to also highlight some grantees during that webinar. So if you're doing anything and you'd like to share, let us know. It's way more fun highlighting grantees than just us sharing all the time. We want you to be able to share as well. So that'll be 3 to 4:30, and that's actually going to be open to everybody. And that means OIE or anybody else that would like to participate. So definitely open that up to anybody you know that would like to participate in that webinar. Any questions on upcoming events? All right, so those are what we have on the docket. And then a couple of communication things. So I'll pop our Calendly back over in the chat here. So it helps if I spell correctly in what I put in the chat. So ignore my first one. It continues to, it's the autocorrect. Autocorrect does not think that I should write this. Okay, third one's the charm. Third one is the real Calendly link. So we did this back in late spring and throughout the summer, where you could just on demand schedule your own coaching sessions. That way you're not having to always just email with us and try to figure out a schedule. So we are opening that back up again for the fall and winter season. So if you would like to schedule a coaching session, whether you want to do a quick or a more in-depth. So we did add that option. Last time we were just kind of pre-selecting all the coaching sessions to be about an hour long. This time, depending upon what you want to talk about and how much you would like to discuss, you can select a quick session, which will book you a 30-minute time period, or a regular session, which will book you a 1-hour session. So you can always just pop over there, schedule that yourself, and it puts it automatically on our TA calendar, and we'll meet you online and we can answer any questions, talk through if you want to work on your budget revision, your APR updates, or just talk through some things going on in your program. Or if you are a new project director and want to kind of talk through some of the resources available to you, help you get acclimated to the ACE family, we can do all those things during those sessions. You can still, of course, email to schedule that stuff too, but this is just sometimes a little bit easier. And Laura has a really good question. So do we have to go through the project director, or can the managers have a session with you? So this is kind of the big difference between the TA team and Bianca as your program officer. Bianca, as your official OIE program officer, has to communicate solely with your project director, which means if you email her and you're not the project director, she's going to have to ask you to send things through your project director. And if you want to schedule a meeting, your project director is going to have to be present, because those are just the rules. If you're scheduling with us, the OIETA team, because we are not your program officer, and therefore we also can't give you official approval on some, like I said, like with the grade levels, we can't authorize you to add a grade level. That's all Bianca, because she's your actual program officer. But we can give you that advice of how you would have to go about that. So yes, on our end, we can schedule with any member of your team. So if you're the program manager, or if you're the family liaison, whatever your role might be, you're welcome to schedule a coaching session. Not a problem at all. All right. And then the other piece of that is just reminding everybody that the official email address for the TA team is oie@sceiservices.com. So the reason for the reminder is because often grantees will email me directly at my, not personal email, but my work email, but it goes to me directly. And you're welcome to do that. And I welcome those emails, and that's totally fine. However, I am expecting, and I'm going to be going out on maternity leave. So if you email me after I'm out on maternity leave, it will sit in just a bucket waiting for my return. So just kind of a little reminder there. if you send it to the OIE at SCI Services, it goes to the whole team. So just start transitioning that way. I'm not due till December, so you still have a little time. But from about mid-December until mid-February, I will be out of office. And so make sure you've got that OIE account because we still have the whole team there. Olani is going to be checking in on all of you and making sure you have everything you need while I'm out. And then I'll be back mid-February to pick back up. Oh, that's exciting, Ryan. So we could be due date twins. Yeah, and thank you everybody for the sweet comments in the chat. Yeah, we're very excited. All right, so I'm going to pop up our wrap-up poll so that you can go ahead and take care of that. That way, if you do have to hop right at time, you still have time to participate in the poll. We do these at the end of every session. We really do look at all of your feedback, so it is super helpful. So if you don't mind taking a few minutes to take the poll, but we are also a few minutes before the end. So I'll pop up our contact info. So you have all of those various ways that you can contact us there. But we have time for a couple more questions if anybody has any last questions as well.